Hello, everybody, and welcome to another talkie discussion sort of video type of thing. So today, I have a very special guest with me. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, my name is AlecEccentric, and I am here for a discussion.
So today, we're pretty much going to be talking about whether we think Disney or George Lucas is better for Star Wars as far as having creative control and everything like that, and which one we think Star Wars was better with, and all of that sort of thing. So we've got pros and cons for each of them, Lucas and Disney, and we'll be talking about those and everything, so that's going to be happening. You excited?
I'm excited.
Alright, so first we've got about George Lucas. We're going to be doing the pros and then the cons for George Lucas, and then the same thing for Disney, and then at the end we'll be talking about which one we think is overall better for Star Wars and all of that. First point for George Lucas is that when George Lucas had control of Star Wars, the expanded universe was still a thing, and of course now that Disney has Star Wars, they decanonized pretty much most of it and all of that. So that,
with obviously the exception with Thrawn, they brought him in Rebels.
The things they've brought back, while a little bit different, are
they're using
still
they're using the EU as a sort of pool of things to take from.
Yeah, it's a good thing, I guess, for like inspiration or something if they need to take something and put it back in, or just stuff that they think the fans would like to see, such as Thrawn. Of course, most of it's decanonized now.
Yep.
And that was one good thing about George Lucas, because even though a lot of the, or at least some of the expanded universe was not great, there was still a lot of it that many people really enjoyed.
In terms of EU experience, I think I outdo you.
Yeah, probably.
I read so many EU books and so much of the EU lore that the moment Disney announced it was no longer canon, I felt like I'd wasted years of my life reading those books, reading those comics, and just delving into the EU, and it's all gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, I felt sort of the same way as far as like where I was and still am interested in the Old Republic and everything, but I'm glad that it's still there to enjoy. It is just kind of unfortunate that it's no longer having more parts added onto it and everything. As far as like the canon parts, like of course like the Old Republic is still being added to the MMO.
The next point is the more Lucas was more dedicated to the franchise. He was more focused on everything, and it was his baby, it was his creation. So to think of it like that, Lucas was far more, like I said, dedicated to it, and because of that, all his ideas and all his feelings towards the franchise were very serious, were very passionate. So with that, that's clearly a huge point over Disney, which to them it's just another franchise they bought that just happens to be really big. It's not as much of a dedication as it was to Lucas.
Yeah. I think they are still concerned about making sure that they put out good content and everything, but like you said, where it was sort of George Lucas's baby and he created it and everything, then, he does seem like he would have been more dedicated to it because it was his thing. Another good thing about Lucas was that he seemed to be a little bit more creative and took some more risks. Not saying that Disney hasn't done that at all, but they have done it definitely a lot less than George Lucas has thus far. Because, like, he did a lot of things a little bit different. Like, the prequels, love them or hate them, they are a little bit creative and different, and did some things that not everybody liked, but they were something a little bit more new and fresh and everything, and Disney hasn't really done that, especially where The Force Awakens was very similar to A New Hope and everything. George Lucas did seem to take some more risks and everything, and he, even though not everybody agreed with his decisions, he was still very creative with his ideas for the franchise and everything. Another point that I have that I kind of said as a joke, but we decided to keep it for some reason, was his beard is very majestic. Mickey Mouse doesn't have a beard. So, that's one thing that's there for some reason.
It's a beautiful beard.
Indeed,
it's
is.
so beautiful, it earns a pro. The next point we have after that is, in Star Wars, you can see a lot of inspiration and respects of previous sci-fi works.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a couple. I know that George Lucas was referencing a lot of books on sci-fi when he was working on Star Wars. I can't think of any off the top of my head, which is the problem. But there's a lot of works he did, and a lot of them were big. And I know he also, with the thought of Darth Vader and everything like that, was also thinking with like a Japanese samurai kind of feel to that, with the honor and the way things worked there. So not only was he delving into sci-fi, he was also delving into ancient histories and ancient combatants.
Yeah.
So with all that said, he has there's a clear deep respect for his forerunners of this industry and this genre. Mm-hmm. And George Lucas kind of personifies those with this work of Star Wars. So that's another and because he had all that inspiration and all those works, he had so much more he could add in, and so much more that he put to give Star Wars its unique feel and its unique, emotion that it gives off. Next point, Lucas emphasized choreography and physical martial arts with not only the prequels, he did also in the original 3 films.
Yeah.
Obviously not for the more acrobatic and the more flashier stuff like there were in the prequels. And the combat in it is very samurai focused. It's very cuts and jabs and sharp movements like that with the lightsabers.
Yeah.
So put that into account. Again, it's a part of that whole respect for previous works, although this in particular is more towards respect for physical disciplines and physical arts that he's seen.
I do think that a lot of the choreography and everything was very well done. Of course, at points I think it was a little overdone.
Yeah,
but yeah, but for the most part, even in like the original movies, it's still pretty decent and everything. Especially, I think, in Return of the Jedi, with Luke and Vader, I really enjoyed the fight between them and everything, and I thought the choreography there was good. And of course, in Episode 1, that was also very well done. So the final pro that we have for George Lucas was, of course, you can't talk about the good things that George Lucas did with Star Wars without talking about all those memes. Because there's some pretty good ones out there that I'm sure you've seen at least some of. So now there's some cons for George Lucas. So the first one is that he didn't really seem to have much of a plan for Star Wars after the prequels. Although he said that he had a story sort of written out for post-Return of the Jedi stuff, he didn't really have a plan to actually do them himself. And if he was going to make more movies, then I'm pretty sure he said that it would be somebody else doing them. He didn't really think that he was going to make any more Star Wars movies after Revenge of the Sith. And even though Star Wars, I guess, was good it the way it was, even though, of course, the prequels were not as good as many people would have liked, it is still kind of a good thing for them to make more stuff just because more people want to see it, and it'll also bring in new fans that can experience this great franchise and everything.
Yep. Speaking of the prequels, he totally fucked up with those.
Yeah.
Totally. Like, if you want to personify boring mixed with BS nobody wanted and overused everything, that's the prequels. And seriously, the Phantom Menace was so bad. Like, was so bad. Like, the music in it, the Duel of Fates especially, was amazing. The acting.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I will give credit, though, to the young Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
That was
Ewan
amazing
McGregor.
acting.
Yeah.
He nailed it. Nailed it. They could not have chosen a better actor to basically nail young Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Love the choice there. That was
Yeah.
perfect.
I think he's one of the few. I mean, of course, I think there were other actors that were picked well, just not directed well, but I think that he was one of the few that really did a good job with his part, like a genuinely good job overall with his part. And once again, speaking of the prequels, the third one is Jar Jar Binks, because I don't really think there needs to be an explanation. This horse has been beaten. It's dead. I'm pretty sure we don't need to say very much about Jar Jar Binks.
Fuck Jar Jar.
However, there is something about Jar Jar Binks that you actually like,
Yes.
but
One thing that
It
has
didn't
never been
happen.
confirmed, but by God it should. The Darth Jar Jar theory. My God, I despise the prequels. I despise Jar Jar. But if, just if, they had made Jar Jar that big, dark reveal as the big bad, Palpatine's bro, by God, that would have saved the prequels for me. That would have made all the political BS. That would have made all the Metachlorians BS. All the acting BS. All the how about sand is rough course and... Ugh, that would have saved all of it if Jar Jar had replaced Darth Vader with that greatest reveal of all time.
I personally don't see why you like that idea so much, but
It not only... It's just kind of comedic in its own sense, but also it would have
Yeah.
been so cool.
so the next thing is that George Lucas didn't really have a very good concept of what was good or bad when it came to his ideas for Star Wars and all of that, which again is kind of Jar Jar Binks kind of signifies that, I guess, where
He
didn't really
apologized
know.
for one of the greatest movies of all time.
Those examples kind of show what this point is really supposed to mean and everything without having to get super in depth with it.
Let's be honest, Lucas is not the best at actually doing stuff with the films. The overall arcing story is that it's just one story about one family in particular that's the focus, that's the Skywalkers.
Mhm.
And if you actually look at it, it's kind of crappy.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong, I love Star Wars. I love the first three Star Wars films the most.
Yeah.
But if you take the prequels and everything into account, if you take the prequels out of the account, it's an amazing story.
Yeah.
But with the prequels, they beat the dead horse of Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader's story so much, and they turn Darth Vader a dark figure that we all respected and knew was a badass. And if you take him all into account, though, you can no longer watch the original three films and look at him like that, because Anakin from the prequels was just a wimp, a
Yeah.
whiny baby who
Yeah.
slaughtered children.
So then the last con for George Lucas is pretty much the special editions in general. While I personally don't hate every single change that's in it, I enjoy like the visual updates and everything. A lot of the added scenes and the parts that are just generally completely different from what they were in the originals, like the whole Greedo shooting first, or for some reason in Return of the Jedi, before Darth Vader picks the Emperor up and throws him into that whole thing, he's like, no, which is really stupid. It would have been better if he had just re-released it with visual updates and that was it.
Yes.
And Yeah.
I hate those digital editions. Nobody needed.
Yeah. It just would have been better that way, and by really changing some very important moments in the movies, along with some more minor ones that are just kind of annoying, he could have just done a visual update and everybody would have been happy, but instead he kind of ruined parts of the movies. So that is the George Lucas section completed. So now we're going to talk about Disney. Some of these are kind of related to some of the stuff for George Lucas. So the first pro for Disney is, whereas George Lucas didn't really have much of a plan for Star Wars after the prequels, Disney actually did. And when they bought Star Wars, they were like, we're going to make more stuff. And I think that as far as getting people back into Star Wars and everything, it went fairly well for the most part. Of course, not everybody enjoys the new movies and everything. But I think that as far as returning to Star Wars and everything, they did a pretty decent job of it. So then another one that has to do with the expanded universe, where even though Disney did remove it, like we said earlier, they have also been bringing things back.
I did like the addition of Thrawn in Rebels. I really appreciated that because, again, I read so much of the EU books and so much of the EU stories that Thrawn was a big character. Yeah. So, when the EU was canceled, the thought of never seeing Thrawn on the big screen kind of disappointed me. But I was very happy that he wasn't on the big screen, but he was on the TV show, and that was good enough. Yeah. So our next point was the possibility for innovation in the franchise. Now Disney can take a lot of their big minds that they have for writers and the great writers that they have, and the great directors that they have, and great producers that they have. They can now create a more innovative story. They can add things that were never considered by George Lucas, and they can even take things that he did consider. So that's a big controlling point for Disney as continuing ownership of this franchise. Is we still have the possibility that they can add so much to the lore and add so much that we haven't even considered. Another thing, this is a really quick point, is, and it is a pro, is Disney is just getting started with the franchise. This is not their baby, but they just got it. They've adopted this franchise. They're taking it in and they're adding to it. They're trying their best to make it both like their own unique version of it, and also they're trying their best.
So then the next one is that they're keeping an open dialogue with the fans and trying to listen to the fans' input and everything, which of course is always a good thing. And I think that is probably one of the biggest reasons they're bringing things from the expanded universe back, because even though they do of course have to make sure that it all fits together very well and everything, they are trying to get what the fans want back into the franchise and everything, which I think is definitely a good thing to do because it helps to please the fans and all that.
The more direct contact they have with the fans and the more loyal they are to what the fans want, the more that they're going to get for their money and their dedication and all their production value. They'll get a lot more because a lot of people will respect what they did, because again, what the fans are saying and what a lot of the people are saying what they want from these films, Disney isn't ignoring. They're taking it into account, which I highly respect, because there are plenty of production companies and places like that would take a franchise this big and would totally ignore the fan base and just do whatever the hell they wanted to it. They'd butcher what people had already loved and tear it apart in general. So I give props to Disney for that. All right, the next point, this is more for the Rebels, but I mentioned the Clone Wars as extra credit. Is Rebels and Clone Wars are the series, the cartoons are being taken seriously. Now I know the Clone Wars was being done during Lucas's reign over the franchise, but Rebels does have quite the number of callbacks that I've seen to Clone Wars. So it respects, again, what Lucas created and what Lucas had, in Rebels. Those two series don't ignore each other's existences. They change a few. Obviously, Rebels changes a few things up. And another thing about Rebels is it actually it kind of corners back to Lucas's or very most original ideas for the franchise. For example, the lightsabers in Rebels are very thin needle-like, which was the original concept art idea for the lightsabers before we got the thicker blade that we all know and like today. And a lot of the art styles and the renderings and everything in Rebels are very reminiscent to Lucas's, and I can't remember the artist who worked on the original concept art. Yeah, those original artworks and those original ideas are being respected by Rebels very closely, because I didn't know what was with the needle blades at first. I was like, that's kind of thin for what I remember, and then I looked it up, and I learned that was because they were harkening back to the most original ideas and most original art concepts for the lightsabers and for the characters.
Yeah. So I can't remember which character it was, but it's like one of the alien characters is based on original concept art for Chewbacca as well.
Yes.
So now we come to the final part of the pros and cons, which is the cons for Disney, of course.
Yep.
So the first one is something that we brought up before, which doesn't really need much explaining now because we already kind of talked about it, and that's the removal of the expanded universe and everything, which did make a lot of people quite upset. Myself and Alec both included.
Yes.
And even though they are bringing back some elements of it, it is still kind of upsetting that they had to get rid of absolutely everything. For me, the Old Republic, it wasn't really necessary. I mean, of course, it gives them more creative opportunities. I do understand why they did it, but it is still pretty upsetting, just because it's something that it's probably my favorite time period in Star Wars, and now it's just kind of not there anymore. So then the next thing is, again, something that we've already talked about, being how A New Hope was very similar to The Force Awakens, as far as the story points go and everything. I personally didn't notice it completely at first, maybe just because I was super excited or something. But after watching it a couple more times and everything, it is very obvious that there are a whole lot of plot points that are pretty much exactly the same as in the original movies.
My problem with that is I actually went into the theater with A New Hope in mind, because my thought process when I went into the theater is I was really hyped. I was like, oh my god. And my thought process was, I hope this is as good or better than A New Hope. I hope it catches me like that. I had A New Hope in mind. As I was watching, just after certain points were being hit, I was starting to recognize a huge similarity. By the end of the film, I was sitting there, and I pieced together the two movies in my head, because again, they were both there.
Yeah.
And each point started linking together like chains, and I was like, oh my god, they just ripped it off. I just want to mention one con that we don't have written down.
Okay.
Disney has been and is in the past and is probably going to in the future be affected by SJWs on the franchise.
Yes.
Social justice warriors are going to cause Disney to do a lot of things. Heck, Rey is a female character, and you can kind of see with how perfect her character is, how Disney is afraid of social justice warriors who would go after the feminist angle there and say, hey, you're making a female character intentionally weak. Why are you doing that? And Disney is afraid of that kind of social backlash. So they are going to cater to SJW's bullying, which includes making Rey a perfect, flawless character, which I noticed, again, is one of the few differences between A New Hope and The Force Awakens. One of the few differences isn't a difference I like, it's a difference I despise. Because it's not that I want Rey to be a weak because she's a woman. I want her to be relatable. And you can't have a relatable character if they're perfect, if they don't screw up, if they constantly do the right thing. And they have these amazing abilities from the get-go, and that's what she has, and it really blows my... Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah, it should be that she doesn't necessarily start out weak, but she like not as strong as she currently is, and just kind of builds up that power the same way Luke did, or the same way that pretty much any other Jedi would. So, because of course they don't start out being super powerful and
no, they trained
everything
through hard work.
So,
even Luke didn't
yeah.
start out as a perfect character.
Yeah.
He got his butt kicked.
Of course, this may not happen, but it is possible that for some reason she is able to be this powerful, like if she ends up being Luke's daughter or something, which does seem very likely.
The new films are going to have a Disney approach. Now, this is a weaker con because Rogue One kind of proved that they aren't going full Disney with it.
Yeah.
Because in Rogue One, the ending isn't happy. It's not the typical Disney approach. Although
Yeah.
I will point this out. For Rogue One, they had two endings that they filmed. One was with everybody living, and one was everybody dying. So they barely pulled off the non-Disney approach. And that was simply a choice they went with, but they did it. They clawed at doing the typical Disney end because, again, Disney has a brand they want. They don't want tarnished. So, and that tarnish is family friendly, family relatable, and enjoyable filmmaking that everybody can enjoy. And if everybody dies at the end and there's always a dark ending, they don't like that. That's not a Disney thing.
Yeah.
The next point is this isn't just my opinion. You don't exactly agree with me entirely, but I think that they're going to go with too many side movies. What I hear about the Han Solo movie, and then a couple other people theorize that they're already coming up with ideas for like a Obi-Wan Solo movie, which I actually like that idea. But I don't like the idea of a Han Solo movie because we don't need his that far backstory. Because I feel like in it they're gonna ruin the character.
Yeah, I feel the same, pretty much the same way. So
that's how quick that point is.
I'll still go see it and hopefully enjoy it, but I don't really think it's necessary.
I feel like it's entirely unnecessary.
Yeah.
The next point is this is again my opinion, not yours.
Yeah.
But Disney is a brand. They are a company. They are a production company. And they pretty much monopolize a good majority of the film industry at this point.
Yeah.
And to say that they're not entirely in it for the money is a downright lie. So they are in it for profit. That needs to be remembered whenever anybody has an issue with these films or feels like certain things are being disloyal. You got to remember they are aiming for the highest demographic they can. They are aiming to please the most people, so the most people will go and buy tickets to these films. That is their goal. It is money. It's profit. To say it's not is a lie. But I will admit they're not in it for profit entirely.
Yeah.
Because you can see some actual love for this franchise in The Force Awakens. So for how much shit I give that film, you can still see that they give lots of loyalties. The tech, they reproduce the technology in Lucas's films very accurately and on point.
Yeah. Plus, if they want to make profit, they also have to make quality content as well. Because if it's not good, then people won't watch it.
Yep.
So yeah.
That's just that point. And the last point we have for the cons and as well for Disney and as well for this whole discussion is, again, this is another one of my opinions. Most of these are, sadly.
Yeah.
But the shitty choreography. In The Force Awakens, I found the lightsaber combat, this is what I'm focusing on towards the end of the film, was terrible. Earlier in the film, we had a superior fight between a clone and Finn, one of our main characters. We had a superior lightsaber fight between them than we did with the end of the film between Kylo and Rey. Because in that, it was quick jabs, it was quick attacks, and I didn't recognize a lightsaber combat form. Not so definitively that I can say that the choreography or anything kind of resembled what you would see in a normal lightsaber combat, especially when the prequels are kicking your ass in choreography. You need to invest more in it. Yeah. That end fight was so underwhelming with the choreography, I was disappointed.
I personally thought that while the choreography wasn't like as flat, of course, as like flashy and everything as it was in the prequels, I still thought the fight itself was pretty good. But
it was more atmospheric than it was actually stunning or interesting. I liked the atmosphere they were setting up, but I didn't like the actual combat. Like, if I had blindfolded myself and just listened to it, that would be far more entertaining.
So I guess that finishes up that section. Just over an hour into this recording. I don't know how long the video is gonna be, but
I have no idea how big this file is gonna be. Jesus.
Yeah, that's a thing. But we're finally to the end of it. So, which one do you think is better for Star Wars?
I think, in all honesty, despite all the complaints I've made about them, despite all of my worries, despite everything, I feel Disney does have better potential than Lucas had with his films.
Yeah, I would agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, I like Disney. I like a lot of the productions they've made. I grew up on Disney films, so I have trust in them to do this right. My opinion may change with the next film if it's as bad as I fear it may be. If it's if it's as good as I hope it is, then it will blow Lucas's work out of the water.
Yeah.
But remains to be seen.
Yeah. I agree. I think even though George Lucas did create the whole franchise and everything and all of that, Disney does seem to have a little more potential and with what they're doing with it. And of course, there's also, like, George Lucas wasn't going to do anything else with it, and now that Disney has it, we're getting more stuff, which hopefully will be good. Of course, we don't know, but I do think that Disney does, at least for now, is better with Star Wars than George Lucas would be. So now that this incredibly long recording session is over, that brings this video to an end.
Yep.
So, down in the comments below, let us know what you thought of the topic. Do you disagree with us or agree with us for any points or our overall feelings about this? And also, go check out Alec's channel, which will be linked in the description below. And everything. We may be doing more videos like this in the future. I have no idea. Yeah. But we might be doing more stuff in the future. It's possible. So go check out his channel and everything. So thank you all for watching. And I'll see you next time. And may the Force be with you always.